right, welcome back, everybody. I guess we're at Run Camp now. Having a great time. Woo, loving it.
Not only are we at Run Camp, but we are in the month of December. And may this be a December to remember for you. It's December 1st, 2022. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 638.
638, and yeah. I'm not even that sore yet from running.
No, you're not, man. Well, I'll make sure we ask you that on December 5th and see how you're feeling as we return from Run Camp. But yeah, we are 2 days deep into Run Camp here in Nutley, Tennessee, where we're hitting the trails, hitting the gravel, beautiful surroundings. Honestly, unbelievable place to run. I had somebody ask me like last week, I was getting my haircut. She's like, so where are you going? I was like, Nutley, Tennessee. And she was just like, oh, I don't know where that is. I'm like, yeah, no one does. It's in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, but it is the most beautiful place to run. It is an amazing place. And not only is it an amazing place to run, but we're here for 5 days. We don't have to get in our car. We get food brought in for dinner. And then the best part, the cherry on top, we're hanging out with 30 of our athletes, just kicking back, relaxing, getting some good running in, gaining fitness, but most importantly, strengthening our friendships and just really sitting back and enjoying the wonderful community that we have. And that's it. That's why we love it. So we do what we do. Very fortunate to do that. We're also very fortunate for you, our listeners. If it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options. The Triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general time is very valuable. So we appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. We also talk frequently about what our own athletes are going through, like today. We both work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level triathletes looking at the very first 5K or sprint, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to Kona, and everyone in between from all over the world. And we'll use the feedback loop we have with them and training peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also utilize our Facebook group. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question, we'll let you right in. Great community, awesome people, outstanding resource. And that's really all I have to say, is it has awesome people in there that are willing to answer your questions no matter what they are. So don't be shy, don't be a lurker, participate, and get your answers, get your questions answered by some really experienced people, and avoid some of the pitfalls and mistakes we've both made along the way. And we'll go in there about once a month and do a little bit of a Q&A, take the pulse of the community and answer some questions. That's it. We don't do sponsors. We definitely don't do ads, but we do have one agenda, and that's to do our best to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yep, that's what we do. And let me tell you, man, Run Camp is living. You know?
Like you said, it was livid. And I was like, man, that must be like canoe
People are
slang.
Furious.
That must be like one of the slang terms they're using out
Oh,
of
that's
Boca
not
Vista.
a bad one.
About, man, if you've been on the leg press machine, it is livid.
Yeah, my boy is livid, man.
I felt kind of out of the lingo, out of the talk, because I mean I usually am anyway. But yes, it is. It is. Run Camp is living, and like you said in the last podcast, like when you sleep, I mean, some people sleep better, some people don't for obvious reasons, but yeah, it's like you leave so much stress of the world and responsibilities behind, whether it's, like taking care of your kids, taking care of your dog, and you got to show up here. It's like, you just walk downstairs, you hang out with your friends, you have a cup of coffee. Like the only thing you're worried about is nothing or is what kind of workouts coach can have us do today. But even then it's fun. You do it with friends and, you don't worry about anything. You walk here, it's crazy how much easier and enjoyable and happier you are when you simplify things. Yet we're human beings in the United States of America, and we do our damnedest to make things as busy and as stressful as possible. That's what we do.
I know.
We wake up and we think about how many things can we add to our plate, how many things can we add to make ourselves more stressed, and how many more things can we buy, and then how harder do we have to work to keep up. And that's what we do. And even though you can always go back and look at the happiest times, or when you sleep the best, or the less stressed, or you seem to be the most grateful, is when things are the most quiet. And that's what it is here at Run Camp. It is quiet. There's limited cell service. The only thing you can hear in the background is some of the wild animals that you're hoping don't get you when you're on a night run.
Do we do night runs? But it's yeah, man. There's like a low level stress about not doing anything. You know, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but I kind of fight that a little bit sometimes here at Run Camp because it's just so chill, and you feel like, well, I really, you know, there's this part of you that's always like, I need to be doing work or doing something. And I think a lot of us probably struggle with that on quote unquote vacations where it adds more stress. So just like figure out a way to enjoy the idea that you're just living. You know?
Dude, you said it, and we'll, before we get into our topic, it's funny that you say that because I think one of the hardest things for people to accept now on like an emotional, mental level is to not be stressed because they're not stressed.
Right. Yeah. That's like, what I was saying.
You know
what I mean? You said it better.
It's like you don't have anything to do, which is great. You don't need to do anything, which is wonderful. You're exactly where you should be, doing exactly what you want to do with limited stress and limited responsibilities. And you're stressed because you're like, God, I have to feel like it's like one of the earlier lessons I had in recovery was that you will create chaos because it's become your new comfortable. And just to be really wary about, you know, doing things or saying things or being in certain friendships or relationships or whatever it is, be careful you're not creating chaos it reminds you of your old comfortable. Because that's what you do, right? It's you're more comfortable with chaos, right? And I think it's a huge issue we have in society. I think is that we're afraid to be still. We're afraid to kind of chill out because our new baseline is so raised and our new baseline is so stressed and the baseline inflammation, I think, in our life and ourselves and our body is so high that when we don't have it, it's like our anxiety gets higher right? Because we don't have it. It's an interesting yet sad phenomenon, I think, that we've kind of created for ourselves. But it's so true and funny you say that because it is. It's like, God, it's like, wait, you kind of like get jittery because you don't have anything to do. And you're like, this is weird. What do you mean I get to relax my brain and relax my body? This isn't what I'm used to. And I'm frankly not sure if I like it or not.
Right. Yeah, it's troublesome.
It is. It's not, but it feels like it is. But what isn't troublesome is the rest of the days. Yeah. Do what?
No, we got to be serious about that kind of stuff, though, I think.
No, I'm right there with you. You know, it's something that I struggle with. I'm thankful to have you as a friend and a business partner because you're great at getting me to slow down and just kind of, you know, relax and do things. So it's great and I appreciate it. And again, we appreciate you. And this is a part 2 episode or a part 2 of a 2-parter that we talked about in 637. It's number 4, 5, and 6. The last podcast that came out on I think Monday or Tuesday. We talked about the 6 most popular, I guess, but the 7 most frequent kind of characteristics and perspectives you have with athletes that are most successful. We both work with a ton of athletes that have been wildly successful, and they all kind of have the same traits, the same characteristics. And again, just to reiterate, you know, kind of why we're going through this is that, you know, it's goals, quote unquote, goal setting season. You know, what are you going to do for New Year's? What are you going to do January 1st? What are you going to do in 2023? I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And it's all, for most people, it's metric based, right? And it's kind of like, for me, when people talk about metrics and data and while they're very, very important, it's, you know, it's kind of like, I hear this phrase all the time from other coaches, like context before content. And to me, the content is the data and the metrics and the numbers, but the context is the lens in which you see it and how you see it and why you see it, right? We've talked frequently before that, you know, we could see an athlete's numbers and training peaks and their pace and their heart rate match up to look like, you know, a great performance, right? Oh, you must have felt awesome today. And if you don't get feedback and you don't get comments from the athletes, they could say, this felt terrible. And you're like, okay, wait a minute. So you have to look everything through you know, it's context before content. And it's the same reason. Yeah, I think I'm gonna be a runner this year. I think I'm gonna do, you know, my best 5K. I don't own a pair of shoes, but I'm gonna do that. You're like, okay, wait a minute. Let's step 1, buy running shoes. Second, learn how to run. And this is kind kind of this, it's very similar in terms of, setting yourself up for success for next year. And then kind of a recap in episode 637, number one, these athletes have a great perspective. But again, these aren't all the ones that qualify for Kona. They're not all the ones on the podiums and Ironman races. They're the ones that get the most out of themselves the most of the time. And so again, it's great perspective. Number two, big picture people. Number three, as we always say, consistency is king. And number four, and I kind of just alluded to it, number four is they are great communicators. This is the most underrated piece that an athlete brings to a coach-athlete relationship, is being a great communicator. And what I mean by that is, it's not that they know how to use the right feeling words, right? Or they know how to, what smiley face or frowny face to click on Training Peaks. Not that they know what scale of 1 to 10 to do on. It's that they communicate authentically, they are honest, and they are consistent in their communication, right? Because a coach's ability to help an athlete is only as good as their ability to tell you where they are, how they're feeling, and where they want to go, right? That goes to, hey, I forgot to tell you, you see a week full of red in their Training Peaks, which means they haven't done any workouts. And you're like, hey, dude, like, are you good? What's going on? It's like, it's C26 well check time. We're going to knock on your door. I'm like, oh, dude, totally forgot to tell you, man. I've been out of town for a week. I'm doing this. I'm like, all right, that's cool. But like, we got to know, right? Not because, we're dictatorships or we own you, but it's like, I want to set you up for success. Right. But it also goes to the athlete's top of mind. It's like, if you are, if you are organized, if you're not going to be out of town, you put that in Training Peaks. If you know you're going to go out of town and you only have availability for this, it's all about success. It's all about setting you up for success. And our ability to do that is only based on your ability to communicate what's available. And then also goes back to, how did you feel on workouts? How did this go? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Right. If an athlete says, dude, I loved, there's an athlete with us here at Run Camp who told me, I don't know, like 6 weeks ago, I gave him this fartlek workout on a Wednesday, and he was like, dude, I loved that workout. He's gotten every single Wednesday since.
I was going to say, yeah.
That's that exact same workout. And you know what? He loves it. And or they said, dude, I hated that. And of course, it could be for a variety of reasons, right? I'm not good at it. Because as a coach, if you're asking, all right, you're going to do 3x8 at 95%, and they just hate it. They don't feel like they can hang on that long. We can keep giving it to them. And to some extent, like, they need to know how to push for this period of time to get to certain kind of adaptation. But if they can, there's so many ways you can skin a cat. And like, if you can give them 10 by 2 minutes at 105% and get close to the same stimulus, and they can do it for 2 and they feel successful, then that's what you give them. Right. And so great athletes are great communicators. They tell you how they're feeling, and not just how they're feeling, but what's going on in their life. Right. People say this all the time. Like, I think this is, TMI. And you're like, there's no such thing as TMI when you're a coach. You hear everything all the time about it all. And it's just, it's not a curse. It's a gift. Like, and it's something you really, it's hard, but you cherish as a person, because you hold this position within an athlete's life as a human being that you're a safe place, right? That they can be vulnerable, that they can communicate, that they can tell you things they wouldn't tell anybody else. And those athletes, it doesn't get in the way of the coach-athlete relationship. It doesn't get in the way of their progress. What it does is it actually propels you both forward, because you know what's going on. Their life is a giant stress ball right now. So you limit things. You know what's making them excited. You know what's getting them down. You know that they're having success. You know that they're having trouble with their kids. Like, all these things you have to know. And again, it's one of the hardest jobs of being a coach, but it's the greatest responsibility, because you're really taking this but this person's life in your hand, and you're trying to juggle and massage these different stresses and balance their life stress. They basically wake up every day, and if they're a great communicator, and they hand you this giant ball of stress, right? Work, their professional life, their personal life, all these other things. You're like, all right, this is how stressed I am. What kind of stress you got from me today that's gonna complement that? And you're like, all right, swim back around. What can I do to put this in? But the ones that don't communicate those things, and you don't change workouts, and you don't work around their work schedule, and you don't lower intensity because their life is stressed, then they're just going to wake up and do it anyway. Right? They're super stressed. They don't tell you they're stressed. Their data doesn't say they're super stressed. no other metrics to go by, and you give them, a hard workout, and they go out and they just demolish themselves. What's happened? They're more stressed. They're not recovering, and they do it again, and they do it again, and they're sleeping less and more stressed. And you're like, wait a minute. But finally, something, heads butt, training stress and life stress. And you're like, dude, what's going on? You feeling okay? And you're like, yeah, I've just been like going through this thing for like the last, couple of weeks. And you're like, what? Like, I got to know these things. So again, it's never over, at least with our philosophy and what we do with C26, it's not oversharing. It's called communicating. And we can't help you to our fullest extent unless we know what's going on both in training and in life.
Yeah, that's absolutely the truth. And certain people do it different ways. I have a guy who 2 weeks ago, he put in, I think 3 days in a row, he put 6 hours of fence building. And then I was like, all I needed to know, Of course, we talked about it a little bit. And then another guy who, on every workout, he's kind of a newer athlete with me, and I really like it. Yes, he actually asked me if it bothered me, but in every comment, he puts what he calls a delight in there. And it's good or bad workout, he kind of reflects and looks for the positive, and he writes that out. It's like a 1 or 2 sentence thing every time. And I just think that's the coolest thing. And it really kind of gives me an indicator as to where he's at mentally and physically and everything like that. But it really does help knowing what's going on, because, the one thing is like things can seemingly change overnight, but I feel like that stuff builds longer than you know. And, sometimes people keep an eye. It's like, I'm kind of starting to feel like I might be getting a little burned out or tired or whatever. Those are the kind of hints, and be looking for those ahead of time and be ready to sort of share what's going on and in the big picture again kind of thing. It's funny how these all just kind of go backwards and forwards, and it all makes sense, and it's good for us to have that information moving forward with, just everything, it's like, I'm sure there's been many times where you've just been like, look, dude, take the next 4 days off, done. Or, it's like stuff like that kind of pops up out of nowhere, and it feels like it might be too late, but it's always good to get indicators every day, and with words and with whatever, like I don't always look at the smiley face thing, but I kind of listen to what they're saying. I try to read between the lines a little bit too. And then I'll just sort of ask them back, even if they don't tell me,
Right. Yeah. The smiley face thing in Training Peaks to me is a kind of a little goofy, honestly. Cause like, again, everyone's different. And same with like a scale of 1 to 10, like your 8 might be my 6. Right. And it's like, people get, joke with me all the time because they're like, are you happy? I'm like, this is my happy face. Like this is me being really excited and happy right now. Like I'm not, we all have different levels in extremes. Like some people only have like a scale of 1 to 5. That's just how they feel and how they process. And some people have scales like 1 to 20, right? It's like, but the role of a coach is to walk alongside with you. We can't do it with the blindfold on. We can't do it with the earmuffs on. Like we got to just roll with it. And yeah, it's super hard and it's incredibly challenging. Again, and people ask all the time about, being a coach and working with athletes and working with people, and I would say like I work with people who want to do triathlon, and that's it. It's like you work with people and you get the most amazing stories and you get to see all the great times, but you also hear and most importantly, feel the hard times, right? When athletes are just going through just horrendous situations, or their kids are struggling, or they lost, or suicide, or divorce, or job loss, or like all these things, and it rips you to shreds. But you have to know, because most of the athletes you work with, one of the highlights, one of the bright spots in their life is training in triathlon, and you've been put in charge with kind of captaining and steering that ship, right? And if you think about it like an ocean of rough waters, and the ocean is their life, and it's just rough and obstacle after obstacle and turmoil and chaos and storms. It's like, you're kind of in it with them on the boat, just kind of steering the ship and providing like this really stable place and environment to where they can be successful and feel safe and frankly, just feel good, and in order to do that, that's how you make the other side out of it, so you can train well and you can be better and you can complement your life. And then before we move on to the next one, like the last piece is like what people really underestimate about having coaches. Like we're the ones that give you permission to say no. We're the ones that give you permission to take a day off, right? Most athletes know that, right? At their core, like, I know I should take a day off. I just needed you to hear you say it. And what it does is like releases and relieves them of this burden of expectation or perfection. I'm a coach that I could take the day off. Like, you could have lost both legs and know you got to take the day off, but you're like, yeah, I think I could probably do like an upper body workout today and still probably, check it for green, but coach said take the day off. So I'm gonna take the day off. Right. It goes back to just communication, and not just communication, but vulnerability, and that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on. I know you and I both do. And that's kind of, honestly at the core of the podcast, is we don't project a persona of perfection and greatness and the inability to see faults and make mistakes. As we're just raw and vulnerable, and I think people appreciate that. Number 5, this is a huge one. And I guess number 6 kind of caps it off. But number 5 is they don't give in to their weaknesses. What I mean by that is if the run is their weakness, if the swim is their weakness, if their bike is their weakness, whatever it is, it doesn't deter them. They're not fearful of it. It kind of pisses them off. And I mean that in a good way. They are determined to get it right. You don't hear excuses like, I'm just never going to be good at this. It never comes out of their mouth. It's, I'm going to keep working hard. What do you think we can do? How can I do this better? Am I doing the these things right? That's all it is. They are obsessed, probably isn't the right word, but it kind of is. Like, they're more obsessed with their weaknesses in terms of like not using as like a negative or like, self-critical way. It's like, I'm the worst swimmer ever. It's, I'm just really determined to not have this be a weakness anymore, which is honestly is a really hard thing for people to understand, because no one likes to work on their weaknesses because it makes you feel weaker, right? And especially when you think about very, very, very successful athletes that are at the top of the top. They're not like, yeah, they all they talk about is kind of like, man, I really want to get better at this because I know it's going to help this, right? And they see that as the big picture. And if they're swimming, I really want to keep, can we swim more? I'm willing to swim more. I really want to get better at this because I know it's going to complement this and this and this. It's not, well, I've been trying to get better at this and I'm just not. So can we just work on the other stuff? Like, you see it all the time with athletes that they just can't give up the next thing, or just, again, going back to what I talked about with swimming in the last podcast. It was like, yeah, I can't get better in the pool, so I just don't do it much anymore. I'm like, okay, well, what do you expect to happen, right? You're going to get worse, and then all you're going to do is feed into your own, right? It's a self-affirmation, but you're affirming your own belief system because of your own actions, right? Not because of what's true and what's actually happening, because you have this inability to swim well. It's just like, same thing with running. Well, I just hate running, or I hate doing these, so I just don't do them. And then I wonder why I'm not getting better at this thing that makes me better at this. And same thing goes with riding, or I just hate doing these kind of workouts, or I hate doing, riding on this or riding on that, or I hate riding outside but I have terrible bike handling skills. You're like, okay, like, we know how to fix that. You can't fix on the trainer, unfortunately. So yeah, it's they have this kind of they are just unwilling to give in to their weakness.
This is an interesting sport because, we always talk about getting fast or getting faster or stuff like that. And the reality is none of us are really that fast in the big scheme of things, like, as in, we're not sprinters and that type of thing. And, I just say this because swimming's always been my thing, my weakest. And I've always had this thing in my head about, like, I want to be, that's my goal, is to be a really strong swimmer, but I've never put in the work, for one. And then, like I've talked about a million times this year, I put in a lot of work before Ironman, and I was probably the best at swimming I've ever been, and I still cut about 5 minutes off. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard, man, to keep. So even during this training cycle with me, I was definitely getting faster, but it wasn't that much, and I just think that for me, there's like, how do you wrap your head around this idea of, for me, let's just say, to cut 5 seconds off my 100 time or something like that. The number of hours or the work that has to go into that. But I say that, and I got out of the water way, way, way fresher than I ever have too. So it's just a hard one, man. It's so subjective about how much better you're getting. But you're right. I think you have to, you just have to put in the work, you can't just expect to get faster. And you have to also, like you're saying, almost get pissed about the fact and not be intimidated by it. And I always talk about this thing with me is that for years, I've just tried to mentally make myself believe that I'm a swimmer. It's so easy to be like, oh, this is so foreign. I've never swam in my life. And I didn't grow up a swimmer. So I'm, definitely not in the top half of the fastest swimmers around the world, whatever it is. But you have to almost just believe it. And then it's such a weird situation because when you start believing that kind of thing, things start happening too, And I think hard work is ultimately what it is, but the confidence part of it is where I always try to instill it in my athletes is you got to just believe it, man. You're a runner, you're a swimmer, and you're a biker. And because a lot of people don't come from that background, so it's really hard to kind of fake it till you make it, like we talked about. But I think that's a huge piece in it, and just believing it makes it more, I think, enjoyable. You go to the pool and you're like not the odd duck out anymore all the time, and you get in there and you're like, I can swim. I'm a good swimmer. So, yeah, get pissed off and instead of afraid, change it up.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Be persistent and be committed to it. Because again, that's where you're going to see the biggest gains too, and the rewards are that much greater. Like when you it's not the stuff that becomes easiest, right? It's the stuff that comes hardest, right? It's like, again, going back to talking about the math stuff I was talking about on the last podcast with Hayden, but we were on that same little walk in the Home Depot. I was talking about math. I said, why do you give yourself like these hard problems? Like these aren't first grade problems. And he was like, well, I like to be challenged. I said, yeah, because when you challenge yourself, the wins are more rewarding than when you do it easy, right? So when you're asking yourself 2 + 2, getting the answer right doesn't feel nearly as good as when you ask yourself what 37 + 14 is, right? Working hard at it, really just trying to figure it out, and maybe even getting it wrong the first time, or maybe even getting it wrong the second time. Getting it right the third time feels so much better than when you get the easy ones right. And then it's one of those things that as adults, I think we forget in a sport that provides so much opportunity, right? Swim, bike, and run. One's always going to be the weakest, right? One's always going to be the ones you need to work on. And sometimes they change, right? Depending on what you fall in love with and what you really want to do. Like you always have that opportunity. And that goes back to number 6. And these kind of really go together, is that the most accomplished and best athletes you work with to get the most out of themselves and most of the time is they are resilient and relentless all the time. They don't give up easy. And what I mean by that is, they're not stubborn, in a bad way. They take days off when they need to. They take a week off after a race. It's not that they're, obsessive. It's that they don't get ruffled by the things that most people, they don't make mountains out of molehills. Right? They don't go, they don't get kicked in the face, and they got a little bit of a leaky goggle in the first 300 meters of their race, and then that's it. Just wasn't my day. They're not trainers, they're gamers, and they show up to race day ready for the opportunity, ready to show what they got, and they flat out don't quit. They don't know what it means to quit. They don't know what it means to give in. They are. You as an athlete represent that to the extent, right? And in Wisconsin, resilient and relentless, there's no give up. You just get it done. And it's not, on the days and when the races are the toughest and the conditions are the worst, they shine the brightest. Not because their fitness is the greatest, right? Because we see that all the time when we go spectate a race, or when I was watching the Ironman Wisconsin this last week, or the Ironman Louisville race, and they're hot and cold, or Texas, any race that's super hard. Like when you see people, all the time you see people walking or having bad days that are just insanely fit, that are usually the creme de la creme. And then you see the other ones that are just like, they're blue collar, hard working, don't give up, don't give in, find a way to get it done type of people. They don't look for shortcuts. They look for the long way around to get to where they want to go. right? They don't make excuses because this wasn't working today on my workout. This wasn't. They just get it done. And they don't care if it's pretty. Don't care if it's perfect. They care if it's accomplished, right? And their version of accomplished isn't perfection. It's not the PR workout or the PR, intervals or whatever, because they don't care what it looks like to you. What they care is it got done. And that is a trait that is becoming extinct. It is an endangered trait among humans, among athletes, and especially among triathletes. Is this? It's got to be perfect. It's got to be the best, or it can't happen, right? And then you've got this bunch that are just resilient and relentless. They don't quit. They don't give up, and they don't care how it gets done. They just care that it gets done.
Yeah. And I was talking about being up with my basketball coach buddies last weekend, and we were talking about this a lot because one of the things that fascinates me is that there can be a guy who's like 6 foot tall, not that athletic, and he just has a great college career. And Wisconsin has kind of had a lot of those guys come through there. And I was like, because one of the guys was in the same, or his son or something was about the same age as this kid, Brad Davison, who played for Wisconsin. And every other team hated him. And you know why? Because he never quit. He was always there, relentless, and he just overshined his athletic ability his whole life. But what did he do? He was a winner, and he would do, like there might be 2 seconds left on the clock, no chance in the game or whatever, and he'd figure out a way to disrupt something or stay with a loose ball just by, giving it one more effort and get the ball. It's stuff like that. And how do you translate that into triathlon? And you did a good job of talking about it. It's like you can't care what other people think about how it looks. You just do what you got to do to get it done. And that is such a huge, I think that separates almost all athletes in sport, to be honest. I mean, we all know, at my high school, there was a basketball team that it wasn't even on the team. They just didn't want to play, or they quit or got kicked out or whatever. They're more athletically more talented than the starting lineup. And I think a lot of high schools probably have that situation, but it was just because they weren't willing to put in the work and they got lazy. And the next thing you know, it's, glory days are gone. But we can do that in triathlon. It's not always pretty, but just doing the work and being resilient and getting through stuff. And that's, just keep moving forward.
I used to, we get ended on this one because we got to get back to run camp, but one of the things I always prided myself in when I played tennis was people thought I was so annoying. They hated playing it. So not because I had the biggest serve or the best forehand or the best backhand or the best footwork or the best drop, whatever it was. I never quit. Never. I mean, I knew I couldn't because I didn't have the best. I didn't have the best shot. But my goal was always to make you hit one more. That's it. My goal is to make you hit one more perfect ball. I'm gonna get it back. You get the perfect ball. And in triathlon and racing, it's like you just got to get past it. I make it one more mile. That's gonna make it one more mile. I gotta make it one more mile. It's like being annoyingly resilient and relentless. Like that's what gets you from point A to point B, especially in long distance racing. Right? Because none of it's going to go perfect. It's never going to go perfect. It's never going to feel great. It's always going to be hard and things are always going to go bad, but it's about how you persevere and what you're able to do. It's more about what you can do and how you carry yourself in the hard times than what you're able to do and how fast you go during the easy times. And that's just a fact. And so to recap, going from podcast 637, and now this one, the top 6 that we have of the most successful athletes we work with is 1, got to have a great perspective. 2, got to be a big picture person, or they got to be big picture people. 3, consistency is king. Got to be consistent. 4, like we talked about today, great communicators. And I could probably put / comfortable being vulnerable is probably a good kind of B to that one. And then number 5, they don't give in to their weaknesses. And 6, they're resilient and relentless. And again, like I mentioned in the last podcast, these are things you can decide to be or decide to do today, right now. That are actually going back to the, Stutz, podcast we did last week. It was like, we want to give you things that are actionable to do right now that can make you better right now. Not all right, if you follow this 20-week plan of this specific workouts that you're going to do, you will increase by 2% your 10K time. People need things actionable right now, not actionable results, but actionable items they can do that lead to almost immediate results. And these are things you can do. These are things you can be. These are things you can choose not to be, not to do anymore, and to make yourself, more consistent, to commit to being a better communicator, to be more determined to figure out your weaknesses. You can do those things. We can all do these things. That's the easy part, right? It's kind of one of the, again, I'll shut up here in a minute. It was like one of the best things my therapist always said was, he said, listen, man, the only thing, the best thing in the world, and you got the best news, man, is that you just have an allergy to alcohol. That's it. You're not this terrible person. You're not this horrific human being. This makes it always do these things. All you gotta do is quit drinking. That's it. Again, the most simplest things in life can be the hardest, but they can also lead to the greatest achievement, right? And accomplishments. And hopefully these 6 help you do that in 2023, because that's what we're here for, to help you get happy and healthy along the way, and also high performing if you choose to be. So, practice these, try to be these as best you can. And again, it's not about perfection. It's about being persistent at making these things happen, and trying to, have these attributes and characteristics. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. We'll see you next week at Run Camp. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching camps and community. And also where we have our coaching info on there. You click on the coaching tab and click on the coach that might be right for you. Let's help you knock out an awesome 2023. We also have our 2023 race specific plans that are on the front page. More info on that. That's it. If you need anything from Mike, he's available, crushingiron@gmail.com. If you need anything from me, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
I'll see you downstairs.
All right.